President Trump posted a clip from an interview he did with Barbara Wawa in the 1980s discussing his views on Iran. So, we're talking 4 decades ago. This is the kind of clip that really harms the cause of those running around claiming that Israel is somehow cajoled Trump into this military conflict. Israel is running Trump. The kinds of things that you hear from Tucker and Megyn Kelly these days. And by the way, they're getting more and more lost in the wilderness with each passing day. Tucker Carlson just praised Oswald Mosley, a World War I and II era British fascist, like a real fascist. And Megyn Kelly made claims about the U.S.-Israeli combined forces striking the water supply at some municipality in the greater Tehran region, which is not correct. So anyway, the clip, very much like Trump talking about China on Oprah back around the same time. When he was talking geopolitics, he was talking about China and Iran, and his views, you'll find, really haven't changed very much over the intervening 4 decades.
But as far as Trump is concerned, our allies are only part of the problem. The real culprit is Iran.
Why couldn't we go in and take over some of their oil, which is along the sea?
How would you do that? Would you send in the Marines? Would you take a chance in a war?
Let them have Iran. You take their oil. That's what
How?
How?
I mean, do we want a war? What do you mean we take their oil?
You go in. You're
how
have
do
a
we
war,
go
Barbara.
in?
You're going to have a war by being weak.
Okay, how do we go in? What do we do?
Excuse me.
Yeah?
You're going to have a war, and it's going to start in the Middle East.
What if the Soviet Union said, you do this to Iran, we're going to come in?
I don't believe they'd do it. The next time Iran attacks this country, go in and grab one of their big oil installations, and I mean grab it and keep it, and get back your losses, because this country has lost plenty.
President Trump in real time now telling the Financial Times in an interview he wants to seize Iran's oil. Quote, to be honest with you, my favorite thing is to take the oil in Iran. Specifically considering taking Karg Island. Compares it to Venezuela, saying the U.S. could control oil there, quote unquote, indefinitely. I don't think they have any defense. We could take it very easily, he said. Marco Rubio made the rounds, including on the talkies on Sunday, including this week, where he restated the administration's objectives here among all of the suggestions being made from people like Clinton Foundation Donor Zero and the D.C. Press Corps, that this is a chaotic situation, that there is no clear objective, that we don't know what winning looks like, and so forth.
Well, first of all, it's important to remember the objectives of this operation from the very beginning. We are destroying Iran's navy. We are destroying their ability to their missile launchers by a significant percentage. We're going to wipe out their defense industrial base, meaning their ability to make new missiles and new drones in the future, because it poses a great threat to the region. This Iran that you're seeing now, this is Iran at its weakest point. Imagine them 2 years from now if they had thousands of more missiles, thousands of more missile launchers and factories to make even more. That was an unacceptable risk. It needed to be addressed, and President Trump has addressed it.
And Rubio also appearing on Al Jazeera saying, look, the Strait of Hormuz is going to be reopened. That will happen one way or the other.
Well, the Straits of Hormuz will be open. When this operation is over, it will be open, and it'll be open one way or another. It will be open because Iran agrees to abide by international law and not block the commercial waterway, or a coalition of nations from around the world and the region, with the participation of the United States, will make sure that it's open. One way or the other, it's going to be open.
Jonathan Tobin is the editor-in-chief of Jewish News Syndicate. He joins us now. Jonathan, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you. Thank you.
So your reaction to what Trump is contemplating in terms of taking the oil, perhaps taking Karg Island and occupying it, and Rubio's restatement of the objectives and where the combined American-Israeli effort is on those objectives.
Well, I think the president and the Secretary of State are merely exploring the options for defending American interests in the region and international interests. If Iran is going to continue to threaten the region, attack its Arab and Muslim neighbors as well as Israel, working towards a nuclear weapon, ballistic missiles, the United States is going to stop them. That's an American interest. It doesn't have to go that way, as the president's continually offering, to stop this. If Iran gives up all of this craziness, I'm not sure a jihadist regime run by, obviously the lower level people now, because the top ones have been killed, but it's a jihadist regime, run by Islamist Shia fanatics. I don't think they're capable of compromise. So it may come to taking Karg Island, but doing so is clearly in America's interest to keep the flow of oil, to stop Iran. And let's be honest about all of the attacks on the war from both Democrats and from right-wing anti-Semites like Tucker Carlson and his crowd. They're opposed to this war for one or two reasons. On the one hand, the Democrats are against it because they hate Trump, and they prioritize their hatred for Trump and their unwillingness to get behind, even when it's a national interest. Politics is everything. On the other hand, there are people, and some of them are on the left too, who oppose this war because they perceive it as somehow, they want Israel to lose. Some people want America to lose because of Trump, and some people just want Israel to lose, and they're basically on Iran's side in their genocidal threats to destroy Israel. That's not a reasonable position, but it is what passes for politics in 2026 America, where politics, now plays the role that religion used to play in people's lives. It's everything. But this is, but the claim that it's, an endless war or a quagmire after a few weeks in which America has suffered very few casualties. I mean, every one is a tragedy, but, this has not been a war which America is losing. It's clearly winning, but the people who hate Trump and the people who hate Israel don't want America to win.
Something else, too, I found very interesting, and this from an unusual source, actually. Greg Karlstrom is the Middle East correspondent for The Economist. He wrote this about the current stability of that jihadist regime in Tehran you were referencing. Karlstrom wrote, "This is why the whole survival is victory for the regime argument is short-sighted. Iran went into the war with an increasingly worthless currency, sky-high inflation, a deep well of popular anger over economic problems. The longer the war goes on, the worse these problems get. More narrowly, a prolonged war also chips away at both the IRGC's economic power and the defense industrial base it needs to rebuild its capabilities. The theory of an infinitely resilient regime only works if you ignore material conditions in Iran," which I know the D.C. Press Corps has attempted to do, and they've really committed to try to ignore the material conditions on the ground in Iran. But, the idea that they have endless capacity to rebuild in real time, to sustain themselves, that they can keep the internet blackout going so that the Iranian people don't realize the extent of the devastation that has been wrought on their country. That is a foolhardy position.
The people who think Iran is winning this war, can go on winning this war, and that is, infinitely resilient, know nothing about Iran. They know nothing about war, but they really know nothing about Iran, its regime, what it does, how unpopular it is, how it's failing, how they can't even supply water to their own people. Forget what, Trump is threatened to do or any of that. They're only opposed to this war because they're opposed to Trump. It's pretty, it used to be that politics stopped at the water's edge. That was a historic phrase throughout American history. Well, that no longer applies because, in this era of no kings by people who supported, who think Trump is a king, but also somehow think he's being led around by the nose by a tiny country the size of New Jersey with less than 10 million people. The contradictions here are infinite, but the only thing that is consistent is that they hate Trump, and they would rather America lose. They would rather American interests lose so that Trump could lose. And let's be honest here. What the policies that Trump is pursuing, are the same objectives that every president, Republican or Democrat, enunciated over the last 25 years towards Iran. The difference is that Trump is taking this seriously. He's not allowing himself to be, he's not allowing himself to be led around the nose as Obama and Biden did by the Iranians and with their idiotic appeasement policy of Iran, which enriched and empowered Iran and led to wars like what happened after October 7th. Trump is saying, and he understands that sooner or later an American president was going to have to do something to stop Iran, and that just to kick the can down the road and to pretend that appeasement would work won't work. He's taking actions. It's courageous, but it's not reckless. And quite frankly, it's not unsuccessful or a quagmire. Iran is in the tough position, but if the only thing you care about is stopping Trump, criticizing Trump, interpreting everything Trump does as somehow being a failure, and if you're also opposed to anything that might strengthen Israel or protect it against a genocidal regime whose goal is to wipe out all the Jews in the world, as well as to wage war in the West. They've been waging war in the United States since 1979. Then you don't see any of this. All you see is Trump bad, war bad.
Yeah, well, I mean, if only it was limited to just hating Trump. But of course, I'm talking about here in America, we've got that other problem, too. Abdul al-Sayed is a Democrat candidate for U.S. Senate in Michigan. And he was caught saying this about the death of Ayatollah Khomeini.
And I also want to remind you guys that there are a lot of people in Dearborn who are sad today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, I just don't want to comment on Khomeini at all. I don't think it's worth even touching that. They're going to try and, this is what we practice, but isn't Khomeini a bad guy? Isn't it great that he's dead? My first amendment was 86 years old. He was going to be dead sometime soon anyway.
Yeah, you don't want to comment on the death of a totalitarian zealot because the people in Dearborn are sad. Dearborn, about 30 miles from that West Bloomfield synagogue that was attacked a couple weeks ago.
Listen, there is a faction now in the Democratic Party, increasingly influential, that people like El-Sayed are part of, that is openly anti-Semitic, openly in favor of America's enemies. It's tragic, but that's the case. And we can't when it comes to people like El-Sayed and his constituency in Dearborn, Michigan, which is the mayor of which is a pro-Hamas mayor. This is we're people are afraid to say anything about this because they don't want to be accused of being Islamophobic.
Oh yes,
and prejudice against anyone is bad, but almost all of the thing, every time the word Islamophobic gets used, it's usually describing someone having the temerity to call out extremism and, quite frankly, anti-Semitism within the Muslim community in this country. And El-Sayed is pandering to it. The thing is, he's not alone. He represents an increasing faction on the far left of the Democratic Party that used to be marginal, but which is no longer marginal. And in fact, major, so-called mainstream Democrats are afraid to offend them. And they, there's a certain, mirroring on the far right with Tucker and, Candace, the even crazier people than Tucker. But the point is, these are people that ought to be confined to the fever swamps of the far right and the far left. And instead, they're being mainstreamed. And we have to speak out against them. And quite frankly, leading Democrats, should spend less time worrying, trying to outdo each other in hating Trump and more time trying to police their own side and calling out anti-Semitism and calling out people who are pro-Iran and soft on Iran within their own party, because that's a real danger to our democracy, not Trump.
Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of Jewish News Syndicate. Jonathan, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And he joins us on Chicago's Morning Answer.
The more you listen, the more you'll know. This is Chicago's Morning Answer. Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Looking for a setting that stands above the rest? At Kemper Lakes Golf Club, it's more than just golf or dining. It's a championship experience designed to impress. Home to a stunning 18-hole course, Kemper Lakes Golf Club is the ideal destination